G'day everyone, welcome to UFC Fight Night Santos versus Ankalaev live betting show with Punt School and also on the TradeMate Sports channel too. Let's love to hear your thoughts on this weekend's card. So if you've got any comments on what I'm saying, any questions, send them through. We are live, so love to hear your guys' opinions or any questions that you have. Okay, I think we had some technical difficulties. Well, we definitely did, but I think I'm back now. I think this is working. So, it all looks good to me. Sorry, I think something's wrong with my internet, but let's start again. Welcome everyone to UFC Fight Night Santos versus Ankalaev live betting show with Punt School and TradeMate. Today I'll be going through the main card of the Santos and Ankalaev card. So that will be going through Bruno Silva versus Alex Pereira, Drew Dober versus Terrence McKenzie, Khalil Roundtree versus Carl Robertson, Alex Caceres versus Sadiq Youssef, Marlon Moraes versus Yadong Song Yadong, however you want to say it. And lastly, the main event, Thiago Santos versus Magomed Ankalaev. As always, I'll be giving out a few bets today, but I do have to be respectful to those who pay the subscription fee with MMA Punt School. So I don't want to be giving out everything as, they're paying their hard-earned dollars for that stuff. One question come through already, which is nice. Dag Maui McConan. Sorry if I have not pronounced that right. It says, why don't you post frequently? Maybe give me a bit more context, mate. Post a video or post a... I'm not too sure what you're talking about there, mate. So give me a bit more context. All right. First fight we will go through today. Silva versus Pereira. Talk about an absolute banger we have right here. I'll just get up the odds for you guys first. Sorry, the internet's throwing me off a bit here, but hopefully we're all good now. So you've got Pereira at 1.57 and you've got Silva at 2.42. I actually like Pereira in this spot at 1.57. I would have him closer to 1.4 personally, and I think he will drop as the week goes on. So I will explain though. I will explain. For me, I mean, it's obviously going to be a stand-up fight for the most part, I would think. And overall, you match the two up together. You've got Alex Pereira, who's an elite kickboxer, elite former kickboxer, versus Silva, who, I mean, just looking back at some of Silva's fights, he fought Wellington Turman, not really a kickboxer, more of a grappler, wrestler in Sanchez, and then he came up against Wright. And Wright is kind of the first, the closest thing to a kickboxer or, a decent striker that he's faced. And he did have a little, before knocking Wright out, he did have a little bit of problem with him, especially in the clinch. So I expect Pereira to use that to his advantage. I mean, I wouldn't even be surprised if early on Silva was maybe landing more strikes, pushing the pace a little bit, and Pereira is just very patient and kind of picks his shots, and kind of just try and find that perfect shot to end the night, like he did with the Michelides, or however you pronounce his name. I think Silva's a good striker, but he's not all that technical. Like, he's more of a, he's more of a brawler than anything. Like, he's faced a lot of grapplers and wrestlers, and I think in those cases he's kind of just been able to get them up against the fence and unload on them. But against Wright, he essentially finished him by just getting in the pocket and swinging for dear life, and he was the one that landed first. So there wasn't anything in terms of like setup or, like that would that shows that he could compete with Pereira on the feet at that kind of technical level. So that's why I think Pereira will close closer to 140. I don't think Silva can take him down. I mean, that's kind of the maybe the narrative that people want to go along with, is that, all right, well, Pereira's a better striker, so do you think Silva's going to try and take him down? And I just think, from what we've seen, he hasn't tried to implement really any grappling at all in the UFC. So you compare someone like his wrestling abilities to someone like Andreas Michelides, or however you pronounce his last name, who's fought Pereira. And, Pereira got taken down, I think, twice by him, but Pereira handled himself really well. I was very impressed with how he handled himself in the grappling and the wrestling. So I wouldn't say Bruno's better than him. At worst, he's on par, and we saw how that finished. So, yeah, I just think if Pereira, even if Pereira does find himself, if he does find himself on his back somehow, Silva gets him down, then yeah, sure, he's in a bit of danger there because Bruno's got a heavy top game. But I just, I don't see it happening. I think Silva's going to go out there and go toe-to-toe with Pereira, and I just don't think it ends well most of the time for him. Small gloves, anything can happen, but add into it also that Pereira's training with Glover Teixeira, who's one of the best grapplers in the UFC. So I'm sure, he's progressing every day, getting a little bit better every day. And the fact that he hasn't been doing MMA for long, like, his improvement is accelerated past someone that's been doing it a long time. So, yes, for me, I think that's my first bet for today is Pereira to win 1.57. I could see it potentially going to a decision. Maybe Bruno's really hard to finish, or Pereira just really plays it safe and looks to outpoint him. You never know. So, yeah, I think 1.57 is probably a safer bet there. Just take that. But, if you can get over 2 for KO, then you're probably, for a Pereira KO, then you're probably not, you're doing a decent job there. Let's move on to Dober and McKenzie. So this is a short notice fight. I think Terence accepted the fight maybe 5 days ago, something like that, maybe a little bit more than that. So he's had about a week and a half to prepare for this one, but he fought not even 2 weeks ago. So he's basically, taking a fight 2 weeks later. But, this is a massive step up for McKenzie. He's basically going into the ranked fighters now. I mean, I don't know if Dober's ranked, but, he has been ranked, around that 14, 15 mark before. So it's a big step up for McKenzie. He's clearly a danger in round one. We can see that. I mean, the sample size on McKenzie is just so small right now in terms of his UFC experience. His first fight was 7 seconds, and his second fight was 2 minutes, I think. So we haven't really, especially his striking, we really haven't seen much of it yet, other than that Frivola knockout. So it's really hard to get a complete gauge on his level at the moment. But what we can say definitively is that he's a danger in round one. There's no doubt about that. At the very least, he's a danger in round one. I assume Dober will be looking to keep this on the feet, whereas McKenzie, I think he'll be looking to shoot. And look to work his ground game, which I thought looked really good against ZM. I know ZM has been taken down and held down for periods during his UFC career, but having fought Malarkey, having fought the Italian fella, I can't remember his name, Vendramini, sorry. The way that, he was the most successful on the ground. I mean, he got to his back and finished him with a rear naked choke, and he didn't even have the hooks in. So very impressive. I think he will be able to get Dober down at some point. So there is a chance that McKenzie could do some early work from there, could look for a sub or just hold position and win a round. I think Dober's, had a bit of mixed results in terms of, how he's been able to cope with wrestlers. I mean, he's been taken down by lots. He's been taken down by Riddell, which is a bit of an alarming sign for me because Riddell's not really a wrestler. He's been taken down by Makhachev, obviously, and also Hernandez, but he sprung back to his feet very quickly there. So that's the thing with McKenzie is his ground game looks very good. I'm not, he's a former wrestler. It's really hard to get a gauge on these things, but I'm thinking that he'll be able to get Dober down. And because his ground game looks so good against ZM, I'm thinking that he could keep him down there. I think a lot of it depends on if Dober respects his ground game, because I think Dober didn't really even try to get off the ground when Makhachev took him down. I think he thought, if I try and work back to my feet, I feel like I'm just going to give my back up here or, get myself into a bad position and it'll end up in a submission. Whereas in the other fights he's had against, Hernandez, like in those kind of fights, he was just like, all right, I don't really respect these guys' jiu-jitsu. I'm just going to get up as quickly as possible. And he was able to do that against Riddell too. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I think there is a risk that, if he does get back up to on his way to his feet, that he could get caught in a scramble or have his back taken or something like that, which is dangerous, going off Terence's last fight. Yeah, on the feet, who knows? McKenzie might be happy to stand there with Dober, which, Dober's a great striker. He's not amazing, but he's, at this stage, he's a lot better than most. But it would be surprising if he did decide to stand with Dober. But it's so hard to get a gauge on what his stand-up's like because, all we have is that combo on Frivola, and yeah, it was great. It was very sharp combination, but yeah, it's really hard to know. For me, it's just to stay out. We don't even know what his gas tank's like, McKenzie, yet. You can go back and watch his other fights, but they're all 1 minute, 2 minute too. So for me, I look at it and say if McKinney got the blows out to 3.0, I'd probably bet him. But yeah, it's just not worth the risk at anything lower than that. Since we haven't seen much of his striking, we don't even know if he can go 3 rounds at a good click. Haven't really seen too much of his wrestling. So yeah, if I'm looking to have a bet on this one, maybe have a look at some of the props. Unfortunately, Top Sport haven't released their props yet. But as you can see here, McKennie's at 2.44 and Dober at 1.56. But yeah, for me, no bet there at the moment. We'll wait and see the props come out there. All right, Khalil Roundtree versus Carl Robertson. Another fun fight here. We have the odds up very close in odds. This one 1.77 for Robertson and 2.05 for Roundtree. I think mostly be a stand-up fight, like you would assume. I wouldn't be surprised if Robertson did look to test his wrestling against Roundtree. If you go back to Robertson's fight with Vettori, he competed really well with Vettori in the wrestling, which was bloody surprising for a few moments at least. I think at some point he even had Vettori's back, or he was on top of Vettori, reversed a few situations. And, he's landed a takedown on Kopylov a few years ago. Maybe he'll wait till Roundtree's a bit more tired before he tries a takedown, but I wouldn't be surprised to see it at all. On the feet, I think Roundtree is the more power shot merchant. I think if they got into a slugfest kind of fight, I would favor Roundtree a little bit more, maybe a little bit more power. Roundtree can be, technical if he wants to be, but I think most of the time he's looking to find a big strike to end the fight. And I don't think his style is really suited to going more than 2 rounds, I would say. Whereas Robertson, on the other hand, is a bit more patient, more suited to going the distance, a bit more technical. And I think if he can avoid a big Roundtree punch, especially early in the fight, and just keep, Roundtree working enough, keeping the pace up to it, decent click, using his wrestling, I can see him either winning later in the fight or, maybe winning a decision. I think early on, the thing is, if Roundtree can get him down, Robertson can get Roundtree down. Roundtree's ground game looks a little bit iffy, so that's a big angle there for Robertson to exploit if you can get him down. So yeah, like I said, Roundtree dangerous early on as always. Robertson might look to be a bit conservative. Looking at the odds, I kind of think they're right where they're at now. Just, it's mostly a 50-50 fight, but then you have to factor in, Robertson could use his wrestling and be effective. He's got the better gas tank, and on the feet, they're pretty bloody even. So, slight favorite for me, Robertson. But in terms of the betting, I don't really see anything at the moment. Okay. Moving on to Caceres versus Yusuf. I think Yusuf will look to pressure Caceres, get him in the pocket as much as possible for big exchanges. Whereas Caceres wants this fight at kicking range as much as possible. I think, especially if they get into that pocket kind of range, that boxing kind of range, Yusuf's a very good chance of clipping Caceres, like Choi did to him. But you do have to keep in mind that, shockingly, Caceres has only been finished by knockout once in his UFC career, at least. I don't think I looked back far enough, but he's been, at least in the UFC, I'm pretty sure he's only been knocked out once. and that was in 2015. I believe it was Rivera. But yeah, 2015. So that's 7 years ago, which is quite crazy to think. He did get clipped versus Choi, but he scrambled really well. And although I think he got hit with an illegal knee shortly after, but I think even if he didn't get hit with that knee, he was showing enough signs to me that he was going to be able to avoid that finish and stop the momentum. So he's very good at scrambling. He knows, he's so experienced. I mean, how many fights he got in the UFC? Probably 20, something around there. So he's as experienced as they come. I think there's a chance Yusuf may look to wrestle Caceres, but I think getting in the clinch with him or just being in his guard, it's a dangerous game to play. So I kind of think that unless Yusuf's really struggling on the feet, which I couldn't see happening really, I don't think he'll go for the wrestling. But I think overall it's a bloody tough one to call. I think both these fighters have lots of ways to win this fight. I can see either fighter having success. I could see Yusuf, knocking him out at any point in the fight, really. He's got big power. Caceres can leave his chin out there every now and then. Taller guy, I could see Yusuf faking a takedown, coming over the top with a big haymaker. Could see Caceres catching him with a kick himself, maybe rocking Yusuf, and then wrapping up a choke of some kind. See Caceres them getting in some kind of grappling scramble and Caceres getting his back and locking in a choke, the same as he did against Choi. Or, I could also see just Yusuf winning a decision just through being more aggressive, landing more impactful shots. So I think there's a lot of way this fight could go. The odds are Caceres is 2.91, Yusuf 1.41. I don't think Caceres at 2.91 is the worst ever bet. There could be some value there, but for me, it's not enough to make a play. Yeah, I'd have to wait until see all the props come out. But yeah, hopefully I've given you guys enough to chew on there in terms of paths to victory for each fighter, and you guys can make your own minds up. All right, next one. Marlon Moraes and Song Yadong, or Yadong Song. Still don't know which order that goes in. But anyway, we'll keep going. Moraes at 305 and Song Yadong at 1.38. I think Marlon, funny enough, I actually think Marlon is the better fighter in most of the areas. The problem is he's got a limited gas tank and a lot worse chin than Song Yadong does. I think, like all Moraes fights, he's a massive danger in the early parts of the fight, in both the wrestling and the striking and the grappling, every part of the fight. He's a phenomenal MMA fighter. The problem is Song has a very good chin. So I predict that he'll most likely be able to handle most of Moraes' shots. I think Moraes will probably try and take Song down a few times, especially early in the fight when he's full of gas. Song, his takedown defense could do with some improving, but he's also very good at getting back to his feet. So he's always going to be making Moraes work in every scenario. On the feet, he can push a decent pace. And in the grappling and in the wrestling, he's always going to be trying to get back to his feet. So in terms of finishing the fight for Moraes, because we know that if it's going at a decent click, he's going to struggle to go those 3 rounds. I think in terms of finishing the fight, I would give Moraes a better chance of finishing the fight via submission rather than KOing Song, just due to his chin. And I'm a little bit worried about the way Song gets back to his feet sometimes. He's happy to give up the back, which can be quite a dangerous thing to do when you're fighting someone like Mariah. So in that Phillips fight with Song, I was just a little worried with how Song got back up to his feet on that one. And yeah, could be an opportunity for Marlon to use his BJJ and get his back or something like that and find a submission. I think overall, Mariah, if he doesn't get clipped in the first round, I think he'll probably win the first round. At this stage of his career, it's just so hard because there's just such a narrative growing there, and he must be having some huge mental battles at the moment because he just keeps losing in just about the same way every single fight. So maybe he'll try and pace himself more. Maybe he'll not grapple because he doesn't want to expend too much energy. Maybe he's just happy to stay in the pocket. Maybe he's going to go lower output. Maybe he's just going to be like, screw it, I'm just going to go for it and see what happens. Yeah, well, it's hard to know because he's got to change something. It's not working for him. But I think overall, Song will try to, look to pressure him, wear him down, which is the most likely scenario in this fight eventually. And from there, it's hard to see how Mariah lasts. How he wouldn't succumb to some kind of knockout by Song Yadong because, his boxing's pretty lethal. He got his first knockout in his last fight for a long time. So yeah, it's I think a lot of that 1.4 you're seeing on Song Yadong is his ability to knock Mariah out at any time. So whereas Mariah, I think is one of his best chances of getting victory here is by submission. So we shall see. I've got no bets for that one, no props, so it's a bit hard. I just don't really see much value in the money lines at the moment. But I've definitely got a bet for this next one, the main event, Thiago Santos versus Magomed Ankalaev. A quick drink. Odds for this one, very short. Our man Ankalaev, 1.16, and Santos at 530. I think, as I'll go through, I think Ankalaev will get shorter and shorter as we get closer to fight time. But I will explain why. I think he can just dictate how this fight goes. I think he dictates. I think he'll be happy to stand with Santos, even though I think that's Santos's best chance to win the fight. But I think he'll be happy to stand with Santos for the most of it. Look to time takedowns when he feels like it. And I think as long as they're well-timed takedowns, which they normally are from Ankalaev, I think he can get him down to the ground. As Santos is, he's strong, and his takedown defense is decent, but I think, Ankalaev's timing's pretty good, so I think he will be able to get him down. Especially later in the fight when Santos is a bit more fatigued, et cetera. If he does get him down, I don't think Ankalaev has that killer ground game like a Glover does. Glover had huge success on the ground with Santos. So I don't really see him doing anything like that. I mean, he could potentially finish him, no doubt. But he doesn't seem to have that killer ground game just yet in his career. But I'm sure he'll be able to control him down there and win rounds easily. Ankalaev has an advantage in the cardio too. I think if he keeps a decent enough pace, can see Santos folding towards the end of the fight, especially if he makes Santos grapple, wrestle, if he has Ankalaev on top of him for long periods. I really just think Santos has a puncher's chance. I mean, which is a decent chance in MMA because the gloves are so small and Santos has got huge power, but Ankalaev is just so he's so sound defensively and he's a great counter striker, which I think is just the worst combination for Santos, because it's not like Santos is some technical genius on the feet. It's more lunging attacks, explosive attacks, and I just think Ankalaev can dodge them, evade, and crack him with one himself. So yeah, I mean, I price Ankalaev around 110 to 1.15. So if you want to take those short odds available at the moment, 1.16 or higher, I would, I think that's a value bet. But yeah, I really just think Santos is just a puncher's chance, especially he's at the back end of his career. His last performance against Walker was pretty worrisome, very low output. His last couple of performances have been very worrisome. He's coming off those knee surgeries after the John Jones fight. So, yeah, if you want to take those low odds, I think that's value. But if you want to maybe get something a little bit better, I do think if the prices do come out, if you can get above twos, so 2.05, 2.1 and above on Ankalaev to win inside the distance, I think that's also a good bet. It's just hard to see Santos. Ankalaev's so patient and technical, and that I can see him not taking any risks at all and just winning a decision and not really going for it because, what's the point? But on the other hand, it's just hard. It's really hard to see how Santos, I just see him getting dominated from the start of the fight till the end. So it's sometimes over a 5-round fight, it's hard to see how someone like Santos will be able to last, especially with his cardio and being at the back end of his career. So inside the distance, you get over twos on Ankalaev, I would take that also. But that's me. That's it for today. That is the card for this weekend. Another one done and dusted. 2 more in a row we've got now. We've got the UFC London next weekend. And the week after that, it's Blades Dorcas. And then we finally get a week off. But haven't already, subscribe to MMA Pun School. If you want to see the results of my channel so far, head over to velabetting.com. Link is in the bio. And if it's your first time on the channel, whether it be TradeMate or Pun School, like and subscribe, do all the good stuff. And I will be back next week with UFC London. Probably the first time, if you don't count Fight Island, it's the first time the UFC has been overseas in a very, very long time. So exciting stuff. And I'll see you guys next week. Cheers.